Let me first say that my colleagues thought that I had some great privilege because I went first today. So this is the month that marks the 35th anniversary of a revolution that promised freedom and democracy for the people of Iran. And as you saw in that video, the mullahs hijacked your revolution. But we have the greatest opportunity today. 35 years later, we have the best chance in over 35 years to finally make good on the promise of that revolution if only we double down on our commitment to bring freedom and democracy to Iran. The regime is isolated, it's marginalized, it's imploding from within, and its only friend in the outside world is North Korea. This is a regime that is about to join those in the dustbin of history, as was said by the previous speakers. So we're here today at this symposium. We have tremendous political leadership that represents all forms of political leadership in our country. Both Democrat and Republican are here today with one voice. And that one voice is, we're here to say that the United States policy towards Iran must change, and it must change now. There are three principal reasons for this change. Our own national security as a nation, international law, and of course our moral commitments to our fellow human beings in the humanitarian plight of the people of Iran. First, national security. As has been said, Iran is the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, both in its own country and around the world. It is number one in executing more of its own people than any other country in the world. And of course, it doesn't end there. It tortures and imprisons and represses all of its 78 million people. But that's not all. It is also the central banker and chief arms dealer for every major terrorist organization around the world. Terrorist groups know who to go to for money and weapons. They go to Tehran. And if that weren't enough, Tehran supports the two most violent regimes in the Middle East, Syria's Assad and Iraq's al-Maliki. This, my friends, is an example of them supporting international war criminals. And if that weren't enough, they are being taken seriously in negotiations over whether they can be trusted. After all of that, whether they can still sit on a negotiating table and negotiate in good faith over an issue of whether they can be trusted with a nuclear bomb. Who doesn't get this? How more plain could we make this? So now I come to the last reason, after national security and international law, that we need to change our policy. And that's based upon moral and humanitarian grounds. And that changing these three issues on behalf of policy are all intertwined with the story of the MEK, Madam Rajavi, and the courageous sacrifice of the residents of Ashraf and Liberty. For without the Iranian resistance, the world would never have learned about the nuclear secret initiatives going on in Iran. It was the MEK and the Iranian resistance who woke up the world to the mission of the mullahs to develop a nuclear bomb. Without Madam Rajavi and a place called Ashraf, the world and the people of Iran would not know that there is an alternative to the mullahs. There is an alternative to this brutal regime, this dictatorship. And if you don't know what that future of Iran can look like, just look at those beautiful pictures of what Ashraf looked like to get an idea what the future of Iran could look like under a democratic country that has freedom and liberty for all of its residents. You can see it in the faces of Ashrafis and what they constructed in a desert, building it into a beautiful city of Ashraf. But finally, without all those who are martyrs that are on that wall there, without all those over the years who've laid down their lives for a free Iran, the world would not know of what is going on in Camp Liberty. The 3,000 remaining refugees are still being denied protection. They're being denied their bunkers, their T-walls to protect them in the event of another attack. The world would not know that the United States had broken its promise to defend the Iranian refugees in Ashraf and Liberty, and the international community had violated the Fourth Geneva Convention when they were promised, the people of Ashraf and Liberty, that they would be protected and defended, and yet they were left for slaughter when the Iranian mullahs used their puppet in Nouri al-Maliki to do the bidding of the mullahs and massacre the freedom fighters in Ashraf and Liberty, all while the United States and the international community did nothing. Today would have been my father's birthday. And my father stood on the right side of history. And back in the 1980s, there was a question of which direction we were going to go in. And there was a terrorist organization called the ANC, the African National Congress. And there was a terrorist in the United States' eyes by the name of Nelson Mandela. And it was Ted Kennedy who said that he believed that the United States of America stood with the future for all South Africans, and that is why he stood with the ANC and with Nelson Mandela. And in spite of the President of the United States at that time, who vetoed my father's sanctions bill in South Africa, my father led the effort to override that president and speed up the day where we got a free South Africa. And so, on this, his birthday, I stand with a new freedom fighter named Mariam Rajavi and a new organization, MEK. And I say history must repeat itself. I say, when you have them on the ropes, you don't let down. I say, when the stranglehold of sanctions is on the mullahs like never before, this is not the time to let up. This is the time to double down. And we must tell this President of the United States not to acquiesce to the demands of the mullahs, but instead join the forces of freedom and intensify the sanctions, support the democratic opposition, and bring a free and democratic Iraq to all the people that deserve it in that beautiful country. Man Irani Hastam! Man Irani Hastam! Man Irani Hastam!